I'm Amy Jordan, and this is Yes, But Why podcast. Yeah.
I shouldn't be so tickled at myself.
You are really tickled.
In the whole situation.
You are enjoying yourself.
Like all day, I was like, should I lip sync to myself? And just in the moment, I was like, yes, I'm gonna do it. It's fun to be weird. All right. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to the Yes But Why podcast. We have some wonderful improvisers with us, and I am very excited to chat about Austin Improv. What happened? What's going on? How did we get here? What's going? So first, I would love each wonderful person at this table to introduce themselves and to give me a little tidbit about how you got started in Austin Improv. When you first moved here, what was the first thing that you encountered? Just a little tidbit so that everybody can throw a story in. And yes, we can start with you.
Hello, my name is Tyler Bryce, and thank you. Thank you. Please sit down. Okay, so I watched I was living in an apartment in Dallas with a bunch of friends, and we all kept getting stoned, and one of them was in an improv troupe called Comedy Sports, and I kept getting stoned and going and watching the show and going, I could do that. And then I moved to Austin, and I saw To Get Away from Drugs. Thank you. 1991, I moved to Austin to get away from drugs, and I saw an audition for Comedy Sports, and I thought, well, that's that funny show I kept thinking I could do, and so I auditioned. I was literally flipping burgers at the Fuddruckers that used to be up on Anderson Lane, and I was like, that looks like fun, and I haven't looked back.
Wow, Comedy Sports. All right.
So 1991 was my year.
Cool.
Hi, this is Les.
Hi, Les.
I want to start with my name. My name is Les McGehee.
Yeah.
It helps when you stare at the mic sincerely. Can you hear the warmth in my voice?
Jesus Christ.
That's because I love you.
Do you have extra tape for this?
It was 19.
It's going to be right here on his question.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm trying to remember the question.
2 seconds in.
So let's see. I arrived in 1978. I was 17 years old. I saw people doing professional comedy, and I decided I was so funny that I could start asking for money. So I started improvising solo on stage and working in improv club, in the improv stand-up club, and I got on the stand-up circuit. And I was so scared I'd run out of material that I made up improv structures that I could do on my own with the audience. But no one called it improv. The improv was associated with the stand-up club. We all figured we were just lying. And that because everyone thought we had written our material, and we knew we were going to make it up every time. And so I just figured I was lying, and when I got caught, I would cut it out. And instead, when I got caught, they gave me a raise. They said, the club owner got angry at me and said, we're going to raise the ticket price $2 and call you a professional improviser. Bill Hicks had just been punched in the face in Houston, so I told this guy in Oklahoma, absolutely not. You can absolutely not call me a professional improviser. Someone's going to get up and hit me. I was working in Oklahoma. And anyway, he was right and I was wrong, and now y'all are all going to pay for it.
Uh-oh, who's getting punched right now?
First improv group, 1986. Super Bowl Sunday was the audition for Comedy Sports. Lets you know what improvisers were like at the time. Now these guys are all part of the best Super Bowl party in town. Back then, we had our audition at kickoff time of Super Bowl Sunday.
That was the Bears.
Seems right.
Super Bowl.
Oh, Shannon!
Wow.
Oh, buddy.
46-10. Yes.
Guys, improv and sports. We are very varied. We know so many things. Tell me more about improv.
My name's Megan Flynn. I am, thank you. So sweet. Tyler stole my story. I was working as a recruiter for a small Catholic college in Atchison, Kansas, and I saw Comedy Sports Kansas City, and I too thought I could do that because I saw the meat counter that he was creating, and I saw the sandwich, I saw the whole thing. Moved to Austin, didn't know anybody, and saw an audition notice in the Chronicle, and went, and thought, I don't have to tell anybody. I'll just go and see what happens. And that was 30 years ago this summer. So.
Wow. Awesome. That's so wild. Tell me your story, Shannon.
Hey, I'm Shannon McCormick, and hello. I'm not the youngest person here at the table, but I am the least amount of time in the Austin comedy community, which is at 19 years still a long time. Rookie. Yeah. So these guys were all like salty vets when I got here. I had been in graduate school, and I had always done theater, but in my graduate school program, for 2 years I hadn't done any performance at all. I moved to Austin, and I was like, okay, I got to get back into doing theater because I'm tired of like just writing alone at my desk. And there were 2 theaters in the town at the time: Bad Dog Comedy Theater and the Hideout, and they were both offering classes. And it was kind of a coin flip, and I chose correctly because the Hideout is still here, and the Bad Dog was not there after about a year after I had made the decision. So I took a class. My first teacher was Shannon, who's now my improv partner in Get Up. So I've been doing it for a while.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm probably the rookiest of rookies. I have only 11 years under, so don't worry.
Yeah.
I'll be like,
what's
that? Who's that guy?
Yeah.
What's "still close" mean? Okay. Anyway.
What indeed?
Anyway, indeed.
It's a loaded
Tell
question.
us your too deep.
Yeah, so I'm Mike Delonzo. Thank you, and I'm an alcoholic. Sorry, that's a terrible joke. No, I'm just fat. Anyway, I moved here in 1998 after having been in Los Angeles for a while after college. And I was doing sketch comedy out there for a really long time. And it was going pretty well, and then it wasn't. And our director was a guy named Dave Rosowski, who was also the artistic director at Second City Chicago for a while. And he decided that he wanted to start teaching improv again in L.A., so I took a couple classes because I thought it would be fun. And then I fell in love with a girl over the internet that lived in El Paso. And I moved there for 9 months, the longest 9 months that a human being could possibly endure. Thanks. And then we moved here together, and I had to do something to get out of the house. And there was an ad in the Chronicle for auditions for theater sports. But I had missed it. And I called the number, and it was Sean Hill. And I was like, look, I have some comedy experience. I don't know if there's a chance that I could still audition. He's like, yeah, come to callbacks. And David Lampe was running callbacks. And I got lucky and got into the first group of theater sports, which ended up being We Could Be Heroes, which ended up being the house troupe here at the Hideout. And then that started everything from there for me.
Yeah. Ooh, awesome. Nice.
I'm David Lampe. Thank you. I didn't name myself, but I'll accept that. I moved here, I think, originally in 93, but I'd been doing a lot of improv, both in Houston and in San Antonio beforehand. And I just came up here with my wife at the time and I was still doing a San Antonio troupe, but I was driving down there on Fridays doing it. This is just getting too exhausting. So I saw that there were some auditions for a troupe called Monk's Night Out, which was run by a fellow named Voldemort. And I auditioned and I got in there. It was kind of interesting because old Voldy was like, he had this concept like after the first audition, he goes, okay, so where do you see yourself in 10 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Going, hey, I don't know. It's like, we are going to make this. I mean, it was huge, lofty goals, and probably, honestly, this person did a lot for improv and a lot to hurt improv, both in this community. But it wouldn't be what it is without him. But anyhow, I was there, and then Sean Hill came and worked with us for a little while in Monk's Night Out, and that followed. Then we decided to spring off and do Heroes of Comedy. We got you and Shayna Merlin and all sorts of people. I originally got into it in Houston back in about 1980 at the Comedy Workshop. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Hello.
So, my name's Catherine Zarate. Everybody will probably know me better as Super Lady. If you watch, there goes the O's. Or as my kids' friends like to call me, Mrs. Chuy. So I answer to all three of those things. I've basically been the tag-along between Chuy and Lampe. We grew up in San Antonio, grew up going to Oxymorons in San Antonio, watching Lampe. Moved up here in 93. I'll let Chuy, I won't step on too much of Chuy's lines. And he got all started and everything, and then I decided, what's the best thing an introvert can do? They can go and try out for Monk's Night Out B Team. So that's what I did. I tried out for the B Team and started, and there were a couple of different names. Inflatable Egos was one of them. And I've just basically kind of been a pickup player. I've played with Monks, I've played with Oxy, I've played with Ray Pruitt, so a lot of the different places. And then after I was pregnant with my eldest, who is in the audience on stage at the Velveeta Room. He was on stage in the Velveeta Room. After that one, I kind of tapered back. So Chuy and I still do an improv troupe occasionally, 20 years and counting. And I'll get up there occasionally now, but I leave it to so I may not be the youngest person. I'm definitely the rustiest person up here.
Man, I like how we're all competing to be terrible. That's my favorite. No, I'm the worst. No.
Hi, my name's Chuy Sadler. I'm homeless because of improv. My first bout of improv was when I was very, very young, when I was a little child. I did some improv games with some older children at like speech tournaments and stuff like that. But when I moved to Austin in 93, got into the theater department there, met some people. I had a friend named Pam Ribbon, fast forward to about 97-ish, 98-ish, I think. And she had tried out for this B troupe, and then she got brought into Monk's Night Out. And she wanted me to try out for a troupe that she was going to be directing called Los Paranoias. And I got in, and in that troupe was the first time I ever met Shayna Merlin and Jeremy, now Sweet Lamb. Mm-hmm. So we were in our first Austin improv troupe together, the three of us. So we played Velveeta Room down on 6th, did the Big Stinkins, all that. Yeah, that's my intro.
Good. I like it because for me, the rookiest rookie of the whole rookie team, I now have a bunch of things that I can ask questions about that I maybe didn't know about. I've known about things like Monk's Night Out and the fact that comedy most of the comedy happened in the Velveeta Room or the 6th Street area initially and then spread out from there. But what for you guys was the place where you first started? Was it Velveeta Room for almost everybody? No. Okay, well, tell us about where did you originally start? Like, who were the first people that you saw when you got here?
North Cross Mall.
Well, no, that was later. Yeah.
We've been
recent history.
We're 12 years old by the time we got there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We played on. There were a lot of found spaces before there were permanent spaces.
Oh.
And I'm a numbers guy too, and I remember everything. I apologize already. Yeah, we played on 27 found stages of different types before we got to our first permanent location,
including poolside at a Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wow. The litany is amazing. The Ritz Theater, the State Theater.
They had someone have a heart attack
Vortex.
I was at that Italian restaurant down on like Barton Springs and Riverside.
Vinny's. Or Romeo's.
Wait, this one was.
I'm fat. I like food. Which one?
This is 30 years ago, wasn't it?
Had to be Vinny's.
Oh, I can't even remember.
Yeah, see, it was.
It's now Black Spark. Why are we talking about this?
It's
Y'all played there though,
by
right?
the Austin School of Music, and we did some. Yeah.
Vortex.
The best was,
you guys did the Vortex for a while?
The sports bar at the Holiday Inn at 183 in Mopac.
Oh, yeah.
That was fun.
Who was
The audience was on
pizza place on 6th Street, way west.
Where Megan played 8 months pregnant.
Yeah.
And everybody was scared to death because she was the only one that thought she was invincible. Like, she'd jump around and she'd jump on the ground and we were all like, stop!
She was like, giant.
You know, improv venues can be traced slightly by when Austin's real estate market dipped.
Oh.
So there was an incredible crash in 1987, and Bonnie Cullum and her dad, Jim Cullum, a famous jazz guy from San Antonio,
The Landing.
they bought one of the movie theaters that went out of business and put us in one of the movie theaters, and they used these multiple theaters off Ben White Boulevard, over by the Catfish Parlor.
This is a very geographical episode of this podcast.
It happens with age, because you got to go turn left where the building used to be.
Right. I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know, remember that cow that used to live there?
Well, this is an Austin conversation. I can't imagine. I mean, the audience is Austin. They know where Catfish Parlor is.
Before, and I still consider it the new Velveeta Room. The old Velveeta Room had the Cheese Pistols. The Capital City Comedy Club, which at the time was the Laugh Stop. The Laugh Stop had the
tiny little stage in that.
A tiny little stage in their second room, but bigger than it is now. And they had the Laugh Staff.
Yes.
They had a troupe that performed there, and those were some fantastic comedians. And then
they were the only ones going when we started, and we're not sure who started first because we didn't know each other and it was coincidental. But y'all all know Robert Ferris, and Joel McCehee, who passed away, and
Michael McKean's
Chris
brother.
Bono and Angela Davis. And so
Michael McKean's brother, you said?
Joel McKean, little brother of Michael
who was
McKean.
also in the Cheese Pistols. Most of those were also in the Cheese Pistols.
The Cheese Pistols had a bunch of people from Asterisk, like Cindy Woods and
Howard
Anna
Beecher
Stewart.
was when
Howard Beecher. The first time I saw the Cheese Pistols, oh God, I have to share this. The first time I saw the Cheese Pistols, I went to go do their stand-up, their open mic. And when I went to do the open mic, they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Cheese Pistols," and they used to have a drum set on stage, and someone came to that. "Bye, guys. I'm so sorry. This story is about your mom." And so they had an organ, and Joey
Funny
Walton.
thing to say at that moment.
Oh my God.
Joey Walton headed like the lead singer with someone on drums. Howard Beecher, I think, was playing guitar. And so they said, and so Joey Walton comes out and he goes, "This song is going to be about my uncle, and it in no way is who's retarded, and it has nothing to do with the fact that he's my uncle." And then he did a 3-minute improvised song with a full band that was completely incorrect and completely funny. I watched them going, "What the hell is that?"
Yeah,
It was
so
so beautiful. Anyway.
With that group, we did 3 shows a night, and the third show was after it closed, and we would do each other's material.
Yeah.
And you could get good enough at each other's material to be really mean to each other, introducing them, because the Velveeta was probably the most challenging stand-up room in the world to work.
Oh, yeah.
So there was Tom Hester used to open up, the wonderful Tom Hester would open up his show with a joke. He would say, "Pardon me, Tom." He'd say, "My brother ate a milk dud, and it wasn't, and it blew his head off." and I knew he opened with that.
Oh my God.
That's Tom Hester. That's not my joke. That's Tom Hester. And so, like, one night I'm introducing Tom Hester. These are the things we do to each other because we knew each other's material. So you'd run from the back of the room to the stage, from the back of the room to the stage in Velveeta, and I'd introduce him, and I knew his routine was to run. He's a really good-looking, lean, 6.5-foot tall guy with long flowing red hair, and he loved to run all the way to the stage, grab the mic, go into a full stage dive with the mic, and tell that joke. That was how he opened. So I introduced him. He was on tour opening for ZZ Top, which was his cue when I said ZZ Top to start running, and I could drag it out just enough that when he got about 6 feet from the stage, I could say, "You're going to love him. His brother ate a milk dud once." And his legs gave out. He went flying across the stage, and that club used to be a strip bar, and I vividly remember him getting up. The pole was gone by then, but he got up grabbing one of the handles on the wall.
Wow. I grew up at the Velveeta Room on 6th Street. Doing improv there was difficult. Everybody talks about bar prov and how it's looked down upon now and stuff. Well, there were grunts that were doing the work long before. So I'm glad y'all all got out of bar prop because it was rough.
I blame Velveeta and growing up in Velveeta for my tendency to go blue all the time.
Well,
because that was the crowd. You perform 4 times a weekend, and by Saturday, last show on Saturday nights, you're willing to go wherever the audience takes you.
Well, it should be noted, too, that it was not a destination spot.
No.
It was like you had a barker out there.
He's
yeah,
still out
you
there.
got your cup, Mike.
Mike's still out there. Bring her in and make her grand.
Yeah.
That's his
And that's so people would be drunk people walking down 6th Street were your audience. And, you know, I don't know, it's only $3, whatever it was at the time. And people would come in, and it was like a challenge to them. All right, I paid $3.
Well, you also had people who were pissed off that they weren't seeing stand-up because outside he's yelling, live stand-up comedy! And we finally, I think in 2001 got him to say live stand-up and improv comedy so that people knew what they were getting into. But yeah, the challenge is absolutely there because they hate you immediately if you're not with
nobody came into that club wanting to go out and see comedy.
No.
They just went out to get drunk.
As the guy who used to bark that door for 2 years,
you did.
Yes, they did not want to come in and see comedy. And half the time when people are leaving, you're like, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." Yes. If they're leaving early, they're so sorry.
Good thing you apologized to those who walked out. That was
But you guys were
took care
rock
of that.
stars by the time we got here. Like for real. Like when we started doing theater sports and getting out into the world, like right before we did our very first show, Big Stinkin' 3 happened or 2?
3.
And
that was crazy stuff.
So for those of you who don't know, Big Stinkin' Comedy Festival was a really enormous comedy festival that for a couple of years was the shit. It was the coolest place. Like people would come in from all over. Did they do 5?
No, 4.
4 of them. And
2 under Voldemort, 2 under Ed Carter.
2 under Ed Carter, yeah. Who was like Albus Finch. So anyway, we went to the festival and all of these troops were playing and they were so hardcore. It was like Los Paranoias and stuff like that. And you guys up at the mall coming out and like kicking ass and like only 90% effective who were like they were
bonkers.
They were super transgressive.
They're so good.
They were
like
maniacs. They
badass rock star improvisers.
I think
like,
Andy now is writing for, or he directs Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, he writes for Kimmel.
And Leon's in Stranger Things.
He's playing Gorbachev.
Yeah, he plays well, he plays that Russian spy.
He's also in The Americans. I love seeing him.
And so we would go to these things and we were just doing theater sports, which is short form games, and these guys were like crushing it, and we were like, how can we do this? And luckily there was an insurgent group of children within our group who ended up being the well-hung jury, who brought that here and literally built this theater for stage time, and brought that sort of rock star transgressive thing because they were doing it with you guys in Los Paranoias and what was
Jeremy,
what was the Broccoli
Joplin.
There was a troupe named something Broccoli.
The Broccoli Project? That's on campus.
Oh, okay. That was a student thing.
Yeah. But yeah, by that time, you guys were already.
Well, these guys, they were high school back then. They were all at Westwood.
Yeah, Westwood.
Yeah,
all the 90%ers. Or no,
well-hung jury.
And y'all were little shits, man.
I have a secret I saved for 41 years. And I wasn't going to say it unless somebody said Westwood.
Go ahead, Les.
All right, so we did many shows. We were doing 6 shows a week, right? So we knocked out over 5,000 shows. And one of the gigs we had was we did improv training for the teacher. You guys look like this is going to be really good.
I was like, well, it better be. It's live.
I have a hunch. Those of you that know these people better than me, you let me know if you think this is true. So we were teaching in-services for the school district, teaching improv skills to teachers. Why not? And one of them was the drama teacher at Westwood High School, who then wanted to start a high school team because we had several high school teams competing, playing comedy sports. And I believe one young man on that team was named Jeremy. Yeah. And shortly after that, it became their mission, that high school team's mission, that since we were a little bit more comedy mercenary, we figured ourselves in the comedy business. And so we had a ticket and a cafe and a bar and all this stuff. And we acted much more like a comedy club. And they didn't think that was right. They thought we were
hated that.
We thought they thought that we were sullying improv, and I think maybe they were right, but that's not what I'm talking about.
But they were shits about it too, though. I love them
And
now all totally. All of them, they were such assholes.
I'm pretty sure Jeremy and his buddies were the ones that came and raided our club during a show. This is a secret I've never said out loud. Came to our club during a show, threw a ashtray down on the porch, opened up the door, and yelled something like "Ah!" and then ran away and got off the car. And the door person walked out and said, "I think that sounds high school."
And never heard to defend themselves.
They came more than once, and I was the manager of the club, who was there one of the first nights that they came, and I was in the show, and our bowling jerseys had names on them. And the bowling jersey I was wearing the night they came the first time said Beavis on it because you could trade them off with other people. And on the second night they came and stood outside our window that's just right outside where the stage is, and they had signs that said, Beavis sucks, not Beavis sucks. Beavis sucks. And they were marching all around, and I'm like, we're just trying to do a little comedy show with the people.
They weren't having it. They weren't having it at all. Yeah. But speaking of like different stages and stuff, different spaces. I mean, we used to play at like what's now Cheer Up Charlie's, Club de Ville out. It was Club de Ville back in the day outside. I mean, anywhere that there was a stage or a place. We played at Miguel's. There was this restaurant on 4th Street. It's like we were scrounging for places to play back then.
The Festival of Lights.
Oh yeah!
Oh my God!
We played the Zilker Festival. It was so fucking bad.
It was horrible. It was horrible, and we had the brilliant idea. This was at least the inflatable egos. Again, one of the monks. Well,
my bad. Go ahead.
Well, whoever it was, we decided. For those of you who don't know, there's the Chinese water torture. Where you stick your head in water and you have to justify why you come out singing why you're all wet.
You have to stay there. Until
somebody tags you out or gets you out.
And at the end of the game, you have to sit and stare at the dirty water.
The dirty water? Yeah, we took it one further. We thought
drink it. Well, that's a different story. But
we thought because it was Christmas, it was such a great idea, we will replace the water with eggnog.
Oh!
So
my skin was so clear for like a week and a half. No pimples at all. Use eggnog, guys.
We played wherever and did whatever you could to just get that audience and attract them enough that when they stopped you afterwards to say, I love you, you said, you know what, come down to 6th Street. I know you're not in college, but come down to 6th Street anyway and come watch us at Velveeta. You were just trying to get audience wherever you could.
Well, we were family friendly, and so no blue. Mm-hmm. We had things built into the show. Comedy Sports still is playing. There's a troupe here in up north, but we did many church shows. So I remember playing in a church show at the church in the theater, and we're playing the game 185 blanks. Walk into a bar where a beer bartender says we can't serve blanks here, and our referee said a famous historical figure, and someone yelled Jesus.
Oh no!
And Voldemort did indeed take Jesus.
Yeah, he would.
Yeah, and it was one of those. You know how you have those moments where you're just like it's gonna end. Like this will be the end. This was a fun run.
I'm gonna tell a Jesus joke and be executed on the spot in this church.
I can change my name.
Yeah, right. I can move again. Yeah. I came here without a job. You can do that, all over the country. Anyway, whoever said whatever the joke, the house went crazy, and we were just like, oh, thank God. And get off stage, and and then you have that back behind the scenes going, what were you thinking?
I don't think he thought very much.
No, true that.
About anybody but himself.
Yeah.
And I'll say his name, Mark Pruder.
I was really wondering if the Voldemort thing was just going to stick. And
I'm going to say it. I'm not going to allow him to get away with that.
I feel like my Voldemort is different from your Voldemort.
Yeah.
So,
that's true.
So if I were to say Voldemort, it definitely means other people.
But I think similar energies.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah. Y'all can still call him Voldemort, but we all know it's Mark Pruder.
Man, that's an interesting thing
Mark
since
can now
it's
be
been.
Brindalow.
I don't know anything about Harry Potter.
Oh my God. Very specific reference. That one guy laughed so hard. Yeah.
Tyler's roommate.
And somebody.
2 popular movies, people.
And one person at home listening on the internet.
He's like, yes! Grindelwald!
So during your time, of course, it sounds like, there was some high schoolers causing strife. There was a gentleman who was causing some strife. I use the term loosely.
Yeah.
But how did you guys, at what point did you sort of rise above the Voldemort situation and get to the next level?
Well,
a lot of people did.
Yeah, there was a great massacre.
So there were kind of two waves of massacre. I got here right after the crest, right?
Yeah.
So Big Stinkin' had blown up, and it was kind of the scene was the scene as it was dying. Like all the monks, people who were kind of had stuff going on, moved to LA. Mm-hmm. And there was Bad Dog had opened up, but it flamed out within a year of doing stuff. And so then it was like the Hideout was the only game in town, really.
Yeah.
And there was still a little bit of mojo.
Well, Velveeta was still there for us. Ray Pruitt's fourth grade class was down there.
Was still kind of but it was had kind of so it did kind of, there was a dead period there for a while.
Yeah, and everybody was so beat up from it that we kept our divisions pretty hardcore. You guys tell a story, Shannon and Mike. I'll tell this story about me coming to Bad Dog.
Mike and I hung out all the time, and one night we were out drinking and going around or whatever, and we were like, let's go to the Bad Dog and see what's going on, if there's a show going on. And we went, and there was nothing happening, and there was some pool tables up there, and we went up to go play pool, and Chuy was there, who was kind of on the other side of the fence, and he's like, oh, Hideout guys.
Yeah.
And it was Chuy is the nicest guy, but it was oh my God, what?
Hey, guess whose check I cashed today? Hideout.
It was like that for a little while.
It was for a lot. Yeah, it was unfortunate.
You know what? Actually,
I think a lot of that was all about him and the division that he caused between all of us.
Well, yeah,
all of us really liked each other.
He was really a jerk off. No joke.
Yeah.
There's a reason we call him Voldemort.
So when he was arrested as the third person in the state of Texas under the stalking legislation of 1994.
Too much truth.
He was a member of Comedy Sports.
Yeah. I did not know about that.
We should have fired him, and all of that would have never happened.
Well, thanks for nothing, guys.
Yeah.
He tricked us because we said he used to carry a roll of quarters with him. I can't believe I'm joining in on this conversation. He used to carry a roll of quarters with him, and he'd get up while we were drinking or eating something after a show, and he'd go use a payphone, which was a thing on a wall that was like a cell phone. 4 feet high or something like that. And and somebody asked him, said, is it true what we read in the newspaper that you had this legal problem and you were accused of all that? He says, oh yeah, that's why I moved here. And someone would say, why'd you move here? He said, I moved here because I'm stalking a lady illegally and chasing her all over the globe and stuff like that. And people would go, why are you really here? And he'd give up. He'd go, because I like Austin.
Well, okay.
But there's actually before we finish beating up on Mark Pruitt, there is actually
it was also fun for the years before he messed everybody up.
Yeah.
He was very fun and generous, and he had great years with us before all of that happened.
But there is
and he brought us Big Stink. And
Voldemort is very powerful too.
Yeah. And there is a story about him that's kind of key to everything for me, which is when we very first started, again, before we did any shows, we were rehearsing for a really long time. They were doing Mi Casa Su Teatro. And they decided to do short-form improv at the Metropolis Apartments.
I booked that show.
Okay, which I don't know if they're still there.
Because of Ray Pruitt's, it was Ray Pruitt's apartment complex.
Yeah,
East Riverside.
It was East Riverside. It was
it's still there. I lived next to it for many years. Yeah.
And Jeremy and Craig Kotfus and I got asked from Theater Sports to go and join this, right? And Mark was running the whole thing and was like, hey, if you guys can't figure out what to do, just vamp and we'll fix it. We'll catch up. And Jeremy turned to me, I swear to God, and said something along the lines of, I'm going to bury that motherfucker. And that is key to what happened for the next several years.
It's the whole thing, which is why Out of Bounds exists.
Yeah. Yes, exactly right.
I had to kill Mark Spike.
But also it exists because there wasn't a festival that Jeremy liked enough. So he wanted to make one that he liked enough.
Yeah.
And Big Stinky was dead by that point.
Right.
Which was the closest thing.
And that was an incredible festival, given that. But anyway, we should stop trashing one person and then start trashing other theaters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, what I would like to point out is there's a lot of when negative things happen, they tend to bond people. It brings us all together. There are a lot of things that happen.
I will say I'm young enough to the scene that I did not know this person, so I did not ever have any of these experiences.
Kill him. Yeah. I mean, well, that's another interesting detail to think about, which is like as when you enter the scene, sort of like dictates how you view it and what happens and who you interact with. If you don't know, oh, that guy's trouble. If that's the first person you meet, then that's who you're hanging out with.
Yes,
right?
entire theaters can be founded on that dynamic.
Indeed, they can. But as far as you guys, what was the next journey for you? That we talked a lot about performing. When did the schools start? When did the people like set down? Okay, let's start doing classes. And then, how many of you like sort of helped those things? Because you've been doing it for a while. Once the schools sort of solidified, how many of you guys were like, "Hey, I can help with that syllabus. I've literally been doing this for X amount of years," or whatnot?
So I was the last person to be. I was in the last wave of people to be cast to be in a house troupe at the Hideout without a prerequisite of having taken classes or like of having a class thing. I did take a class because I was interested, and then they had auditions after that 6-week period, and I auditioned and I got in the troupe, and I didn't take any more classes as classes. And so it was like early 2001 when Sean really set down like we're gonna have this like class to performance pipeline. And I feel like that was like kind of the first time.
Was that the first time? Did y'all guys do that at all over at Comedy Sports?
So in 1992, we had a member named Robert Stanton who started teaching kids classes through Zach Scott. And he decided he didn't want to do them anymore. And so instead of turning him over to somebody else, he offered him to me, and I turned him over to Comedy Sports. And so I started teaching all the winter and summer classes for kids at Zach Scott, and then sometime around 96 or 97, those became adult classes that I taught there. Les also taught some of those classes. So we
did about 10 years with Zach Scott and about 5 years worth of adult classes there.
Were you doing the adult classes as a casting mechanism, or
so
just
they were? Like Jen Cargill went through those classes. I taught
Carol Fisher, Jesse Pangelina. We got some really good guys.
I taught a workshop I subbed for a woman who taught at UT, and that's where Rachel Medorsky took my class. Stopped taking at UT and came and took for me over at Zach Scott. So yeah, there have been people doing workshops.
So it seems like, and kind of like on the outside, it seems like back when we were starting, the B troops was a whole big thing, right? You had a lot of these B troops, and that was your feeder into if you wanted to perform on a regular basis with Monks Night Out or whomever. That was your avenue in, or you created your own troupe. It seems like that transition, is that really what happened? It transitioned more into the classes. That's your beat.
You know what it looked like when y'all started flourishing? For someone who had been here a long time in the previous smaller town and everything, it looked like an entirely new thing. So even though we were doing the same discipline in a lot of ways, we had associated ourselves with comedy clubs and making a living. I mean, improv paid for my kids' braces and my kids' home and stuff like that. Oddly enough, really. And then when and any groups that were in town other than the Laugh staff had come from our group, and so we just kind of made our peace with that after a while. And then when Sean was starting down here, it was the beginning. When Sean started doing what y'all are doing here, then it started to become a different thing, where we'd had a comedy community and we had a theater community, and the improv community became its own thing. And looking back, I can see that y'all started and you became your own thing. And when I was so fortunate, Parallelogram, P-Graph. The wonderful folks at P-Graph were performing while we were getting ready, and I was telling Amy that I remember when the B. Iden Payne Awards brought me into MC because they wanted an improv person to give the first improv award to a local group. And so we performed improv at B. Iden Payne, and for me, it felt crazy that the improv entity had become its own thing to such an extent that we were at the table at the theater thing and at the comedy thing, and that's how it looked.
Let me just give you a little perspective here, just to kind of going off of what you're saying, Les. When my wife and I moved out of town in 2003. When we left, there were probably about 5 improv troupes working in town.
That's about right.
At the most.
Yeah.
When I came back 7 years later, there were about 50. Now, today, another 10 years, it's got to be, I have
in 10 alone.
I'm in at least 10 troops, I'm not even kidding. Anybody want to start a duo? Anyway, no?
Yes.
Right now.
So in 2002, somewhere thereabouts, Comedy Sports closed, and Les and his troupe started performing here on this stage.
Right.
And so in 2003, I had moved to New York. I had moved there in 2001, and I came back for Owen Edgerton's wedding and performed on this stage in 2002 going into 2003 because it was over New Year's weekend. Mm-hmm. And I had a point when I started this. So at that point, Jen Cargill, who had moved to Chicago, and Rachel Medorsky, who at that point was in Cleveland, kind of pulled me aside and said, we're about to move back to Austin, and we're going to start doing stuff here. And I'm like, okay. They're like, you need to come back here. This is about to be a hub for improv because we're bringing the Chicago model here. This is going to blow the fuck up. And I'm like, Jen, I'm really happy in New York, and I don't know why I'd come back to Austin for improv. Okay, whatever. And then they moved back. And I'm not saying that they did all of it, but their pictures are certainly in this.
Yeah. So it was a weird accident. It was 2005. Mike and I were running out of bounds, and Rachel and Dave moved down with that mindset of hey, we've gone through all the Chicago stuff. We're gonna kind of create this kind of that model. But then Katrina happened, and the Cold Town people came out. Literally, Jastro called me.
It was 2 days before the festival started. We were hanging out at a bar that we were booking as one of the party spaces for that festival, and he got a call from Mike Jastro that was like, "Hey, we're displaced.
Can we come play in your
Is there any
festival?
stage time that we could get?" And we were like, "Well, we booked everything,
So
but we'll ask
get
the individual troops." And
So
everyone gave them stage
Well,
time.
so get up. They played with us.
Yeah, and I think they played with
maybe somebody else too. But I maybe still have a paper somewhere because Jastro's name's hard to spell. So I'm just Mike it's I've got it written down. It's all weird.
Yeah,
it's not how he spells his name. And I think those guys coming and Dave and Rachel and stuff. 05 is to me the real beginning of where we're at.
Quick
What do you have to say,
perspective.
David?
Just a real quick historical perspective.
From an old man named Lampe.
I'll forget it.
Go ahead.
No. You hurt my feelings.
You're so good.
Real quick historical perspective. We had, of course, there was the Comedy Sports going on, and then you guys, the whole Comedy Sports thing ran into a little bit of trouble. The national one, didn't it, for a while?
That's a whole different story.
But anyway,
probably more than one.
You guys were always running.
Which catechism you're referring to?
You guys were always running, and you were said on one thread. Then we had Voldemort and Cheeseville, and he sprang off of you. Yeah. But then we had Monk's Night Out going on, and that was running at the Velveeta. Then Sean Hill came, and he decided, I have done theater sports. I studied theater sports over there. I want to form a theater sports troupe, and he built the Hideout. Now, so we were running, there's 3 different ones running at that point in time. Then, of course, in 2003, as you said, Katrina, Cold Town came down. Yeah, 05. And they got a theater, right away.
Within a year.
Yeah.
But it
was gifted to them.
It made me so jealous.
Do they still pay
it
rent?
was the $2,000 checks that they got from Katrina.
Yeah.
But
they opened their theater based on those $2,000 checks that they gave.
Well, let me finish real quick.
Yeah.
So we ended up with Cold Town then. Then we had Tom And Asaf and Tom both moved. Asaf from New York and Tom, and they decided they would put their own theater together, so they started the Institution Theater. And of course, then we had a split in Cold Town, which brought in the New Movement Theater, which is where you originated, correct?
Yep, that's where I started.
Suddenly it was like, but one thing that was very odd about it, which was not the Chicago model, was that all the theaters, except for that one little weird split, were very supportive of each other from the word go.
Yeah.
And I tell you, Chicago wasn't like that. LA's not like that. New York. But it was like,
shit, Austin wasn't like that.
Yeah, but you know what happened?
Chuy
Honestly,
was like, Hideout.
I didn't like you guys.
But you know what happened? Two things happened, I think, that made that work. Was we all went, this is weird, but we all went through 9/11 together. Oh. And I remember we were rehearsing that day, and we had to determine whether or not we were going to play that weekend. And we talked to Sean, and Sean was like, yeah, go. And then I remember seeing y'all were playing.
Yeah.
And
we had the same conversation, though. It's like, are we supposed to? Are we not supposed to? And it was a real gut check as an improviser.
Yeah.
Or what are we supposed to do here?
But then the Chronicle wrote an article about all of us performing in the wake of 2000, in the wake of 9/11. And everybody became sort of appreciative of the fact that we were part of a larger community than just our own theater. And that, I think, coupled with the fact that, and I can never really overstate how important Sean Hill is to this entire process.
Yeah.
Because Sean made a lot of money as a game developer. And
where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, right?
No,
he was part of that one.
Was
Max Submarine.
But he,
a few different.
And so when he bought the Hideout, which was a pawn shop, and cost relatively nothing when he bought it, he was he was trying to make money, but he didn't need to make money, which was, I think, different than everybody else.
Yeah, we needed
and so
to make money.
we had time to sort of experiment and gather an audience, because Shannon will tell you, and everybody else who played with us will tell you, for 2 years there was about a 70% chance that we wouldn't make. Like there were shows.
03 and 04 were
brutal.
Dead.
Yeah.
Dead. I mean, like, it was like the improv community was probably about the size of everybody here in the house.
Yeah.
Well, just real quick, we talk about like the different places and all that stuff. I tried back then to get like an all-star jam going in each different theater. Like each of us throw 2 people at each other's theater and stuff like that. We did it once, I think, at Comedy Sports and once at Velveeta, and then like it just kind of disappeared. Nobody cared. And back then nobody gave a shit. And now I think if you try to keep somebody from a fucking jam, you can't. That's a beautiful thing.
Well, and I think to kind of wrap a lot of this up and put a little bow on it, if you look back at what we've just talked about, back in the beginning, you were fighting for spots. You were trying to find that place above a bar and behind a bar and at a pool and things like that. And then when people came along that could actually set things up like the Hideout or like Cold Town or wherever, those became homes for whomever wanted to do improv. And that, so then we had homes.
Before we compliment my good friend Sean Hill, who is my partner in 2 different businesses, and I love him dearly to this day. I wish you were here, Sean. I put all the furniture in here for him. So while we're talking about he'll remember the day.
No wonder it's all fucked up.
Your beer out.
I'm wrong. I'm sorry.
It hasn't been this way in a long time, but I just want to say when I started doing performances here, the stage was against that wall.
Yeah, it was like,
and it was long, and everybody sat on risers over here. It was weird as hell.
Oh, it's funny to look at the every space and the way they've reconfigured it. Even the Velveeta room, they're all like, "Oh, this is here now, and that's there."
Some of my best shows happened like right over there.
What you guys refer to as what you refer to, I don't know why I talk that way, but the modern Velveeta room, you realize it was a storage closet.
Yeah.
And we went and talked Shannon out of it. We went and told Shannon, look, we can get all this stuff out of here and put a stage. I got a costume, you got a light. Come on, let's go.
And it was called the Deep End, and it was there while the Velveeta room was back where it used to be.
Because Esther's was called Esther's Pool, like Esther Williams. So we called it the Deep End at Esther's
It's where the
Pool.
Blind Pig Pub is. Okay. That was the old Velveeta.
Right. You know what, guys? We're going to have to wrap it up. We've gotten through our 50 minutes of chatting. I totally understand. I feel like we've dealt with a lot of trauma. I feel good about this. I feel like we've gotten through
think we
I'm
have
worried
to-
that the internet's talking about it because I felt like somebody held a phone up, like, "Oh my God, there's, I don't know what happened."
Mark
You
Bruder's
know,
on his
they're
way.
like, yeah, watch out.
He's trending
That's
on
happening.
Hashtag Mark Bruder.
He would love that.
He honestly would.
My podcast is so much more popular if that's the case. But thank you guys all for being with me. I would love to interview each of you individually and spend more time and find out about each of your individual stories. And we will, audience, don't you worry, we'll get that information so you can hear it and it'll be great. But one thing that I wanted to do before we finished was to have the teeniest, tiniest little jam with some OG improvisers, if you don't mind terribly.
It'd be great. And before we turn the mics off, I got to say how much I love every single individual. And the things, I really mean it, the things that we bring to the community. And Austin is this big city. It used to be a small city. And we are here bringing everyone together and laughing. And I just love you guys so much for all the commitments you've made all the years and all the crazy things I remember about each of you. Thank you for bringing us together.
That's a real nice way.
Well said, Lampe.
All right, kick off that outro and let's move this table.
Thanks for listening to Yes But Why Podcast. Check out all our episodes on yesbutwhypodcast.com or check out all the content on our network, HC Universal, at hcuniversalnetwork.com.